Walk Worthy. This podcast is a Bible study of Colossians 1, 9 through 12. It requires some knowledge of Accordance Bible software, and a bit of Greek would be helpful. Exegeting Scripture, the scholarly phrase for Bible study, starts with reading the Bible closely. We pay attention to the details, asking questions like, what is the main message of this passage, the information or the point, and what did its author hope to achieve, the purpose or anticipated outcome. In today's podcast, we're going to examine the purpose clause of Colossians 1, 9 through 12. Paul's hope that the Colossians would walk worthy. Today's passage is part of Paul's opening prayer for the Colossians. Here it is in three versions, the Greek New Testament, as well as the NRSV, and the 2011 NIV. While we're going to be working primarily from the Greek New Testament, let me read it from the NIV. For this reason, since the day we heard about you, we have not stopped praying for you. We continually ask God to fill you with the knowledge of His will through all wisdom and understanding that the Spirit gives, so that you may live a life worthy of the Lord and please Him in every way, bearing fruit in every good work, growing in the knowledge of God, being strengthened with all power according to His glorious might, so that you may have great endurance and patience, and giving joyful thanks to the Father, who has qualified you to share in the inheritance of His holy people in the kingdom of light. If we're going to study this passage, the first thing we need to do is to set the limits of our study. We're going to focus on this purpose clause, which answers the question, why? Why did Paul want the Colossians to be filled with the knowledge of God's will? The passage itself is typical of Paul. Its sentences are long and convoluted, extending well beyond most modern readers' attention span. We'll need to break it up so we can absorb its information a bit at a time. A basic knowledge of Greek and a couple of good tools will help. Here are two tools that I recommend. The diagrams of the Greek New Testament, available for purchase in the Accordance store, and Morphological coding highlights, now available for free on the Accordance Exchange. Here's how to get both. I often assume that people know about the Accordance store. I probably shouldn't, as some of you don't visit often enough. All of Accordance's resources are available for purchase online here. Here we can also log into our account, browse products, or search for a resource. In this case, I'm going to recommend the latter, searching for Greek diagrams. Right at the top is the diagrams for the Greek New Testament. This resource includes diagrams for every sentence in the Greek New Testament. Assembled by a number of different Greek scholars, they were edited by Dr. Rex A. Koivisto at Multnomah University. Once purchased, we can then download this resource into Accordance using Easy Install. The second resource is free and located on the Accordance Exchange here. All of the resources on this exchange are free and have been contributed by other Accordance users, so feel free to browse and download as many as you want. For this one, click Highlights, and this is the resource we want. It was created and contributed by Dr. Mark Vitalis Hoffman of United Lutheran Seminary. Download and decompress it, then drop it into the Highlights folder in your Accordance files. Unless you've moved it elsewhere, Accordance files should be in your Documents folder. Now that we have both resources installed, let's add them to our workspace. First, we click Highlights and choose Morphological coding. If the highlight file doesn't appear among these choices at first, quit and then restart Accordance. Also, notice that these highlights only work for the NA28 Greek New Testament, so be sure you're looking at this text. Next, let's use Add Parallel and choose Diagram. If you're short on space, I suggest putting it in place of the NRSV, as I did here. Now, I realize this diagram is so small it's hard to read, but stick with me for just a moment while we look at the overall structure of the Greek text. The purpose clause begins here, at the beginning of verse 10 with the infinitive peripatesai. It's highlighted in green. If we hover over the word with our cursor, we can see the cross-highlighting in the diagram and in the NIV. This infinitive is then qualified by 4 nominative participles, all of them highlighted in a light red because they're participles, and outlined with blue rectangles because they're nominative participles. They also all happen to be present participles, indicating ongoing or repeated action. Cross-highlighting will identify them too, but let's just add blue rectangles to identify them in this screenshot. Notice that the diagram arranges them in parallel clauses underneath peripatesi. These participles explain just what characterizes a worthy lifestyle. Now at this point, the passage breaks into sections just like an orange. A little bit of numbering and some manual highlighting, and here's the result applied to both the NRSV and the NIV. Both texts accurately render the Greek peripateo as live or lead life. However, and I never thought I'd hear myself say this, I think the NIV does a much better job of translating the rest of the Greek passage than the NRSV. Notice that each of the participles are rendered as present participles. They have ing at the end, bearing, growing, being strengthened, and giving. This more accurately conveys the ongoing sense of the Greek present participles and also retains the parallelism among the four terms. Let's take just a moment and look at a better view of the Greek diagrams. I've duplicated them and enlarged them. For those of you interested in how to duplicate this workspace, I opened a second instance of the diagrams using Add Parallel, then untied the scrolling for both panes using the Action menu, so I could arrange them sequentially. I then narrowed both text columns as much as I could and scrolled and enlarged the diagrams as much as possible. Let's apply the same highlighting and numbering to the diagram we applied to the text so that the relationship among them is clear. By the way, I should mention that the words in the Greek diagramming tool are already color-coded by parts of speech, though these colors are neither the same as Dr. Hoffman's coding nor as detailed. At this point, we're ready to construct a basic expository sermon outline. The title could be something like, "What kind of lifestyle is worthy of the Lord?" Colossians 1, 9 through 12. There are 4 characteristics, and for those of you who are homileticians, this sermon's key word would then be characteristics. These 4 characteristics drawn directly from the text would be bearing fruit in every good work, verse 10a, growing in the knowledge of God, verse 10b, being strengthened by God, verse 11, which has 2 sub-reasons, for great endurance and for great patience. The last characteristic, 4, is giving joyful thanks to God, verse 12. Notice that this simple outline follows the Greek text in both content and organization. Breaking the passage into individual points helps an audience understand, while also allowing the speaker more time to develop each point. Reading the Bible closely is an important part of Bible study, and it yields great rewards. Analyzing the sentence structure is part of the process. I'd like to personally thank Professors Rex Koivisto and Mark Hoffman for their work, as their tools make this process a whole lot easier. This has been Dr. J for Accordance Bible Software. Thank you for watching this episode of Lighting the Lamp.